Alcohol,
drugs,
pornography,
fentanyl,
food,
restricting food,
social media.
adrenaline,
This is tough.
pornography.
News.
News, pornography,
Yeah. Chaos creating,
marijuana.
codependency, adrenaline.
Checkmate.
Checkmate. Hey, you may have already guessed it, but today we're talking about the problem and solution of addiction with special guest John Ruby. Let's dive in. Hey guys, I'm Steve, and this is Level Up, the monthly dose of leadership training that will help you take your next level group to the next level. We're really excited today. We're doing something a little bit different. Usually we speak just to group leaders, but today we're talking to everybody about the problem and solution of addictions. Nobody better to do that I can think of than John Ruby. John, welcome.
Man, thanks so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. John is the Union City Church planter and pastor. He is the kind of the mind behind Ashes to Rubies, which is kind of an initiative to those who have addictions. And last but not least, he's the mind behind the social enterprise Carlington Booch, all about kombucha. That's a lot that you're doing right now.
Can be a lot, yeah.
There's got to be a story behind us. Behind that, let us in on a little bit.
There's
of that.
a little bit of a story. This is basically I got here by divine intervention.
Yeah.
And I always say that I've been inconvenienced against my own will, but the will of God. And so here I am today. 17 years ago, 2005, I found myself on the streets of Ottawa. I was emotionally, spiritually, and physically bankrupt. And I was trying to live, but trying to die at the same time with my own addictions, and found myself at a homeless shelter. And from there, it was the beginning of an end of my addiction, and got into this recovery game, so to say, and found recovery through the 12-step process, and got put back my family together in 2005. And then I've been in addiction services in order to stay sober and maintain my sobriety and my relationship with God. I've had to find ways on how to serve others. And so doing it my way didn't really work at the beginning too much, in a rocky first year, so to say, and then got into service to others, started working with guys in mental illness, and then transitioned into addiction services for the next decade.
Wow.
And then here we are, we planted a church out of that, just seeing that there was a gap of community and connection. So we wanted to increase our capacity in our community to be able to connect those that don't necessarily get to go to a rehab center. Not everybody needs to go or gets to go to a rehab center, but that's kind of where church planting came from about 7 years ago.
Amazing.
Thank you.
You're the right guy for this video. I'm excited to have you here. It's really good. Let's dive right in to the problem of addictions. At the beginning of this video, we kind of named a bunch of different types of addictions. There's so many that you can think of. And that's what we really see on the surface. That's what we experience as people, is all these different kinds of addictions. Can you speak a little bit to that? What are the addictions? What's behind it?
So we look at all these substances and things that happen inside of us that keep us trapped and enslaved to a certain go-to. And so that could be pornography, that could be codependency, relationships, it could be substances, it could be medication that has been prescribed to as a doctor. And so we look at all of those things as just symptoms to the real problem. And so we could try to treat the symptoms. We could try to treat the substance and the addictions with very little lasting effect. And so we try the therapist, and we try the hold our breath till we just stay sober long enough, and I'll get it again and again. And okay, maybe this time if I do it a little bit differently, if I take away this relationship, if I just get this degree, or if I get a different job, maybe that's what's going to change. Or maybe a move to a different city would really set me on the right path. And so we can look at trying to treat the addiction, but that's not even the problem.
That makes so much sense. So we've got all this stuff on the surface. We've got these symptoms showing up in our lives, and you're saying we should be asking the deeper question, what's underneath
What's
that?
the real problem? Because those are the solutions.
Yeah.
Alcohol and drugs and relationships were actually my solution.
Right. Solution to your deeper problem. So if I'm a person who's seeing these symptoms in my life, I should be asking the question, what's deeper? Help us kind of dig into that. What is the deeper problem?
So what we look at is the real problem is a spiritual problem by nature.
Okay.
And so we can trace that back to the Garden of Eden, where man and woman were hand in hand with God, hand in hand with the Creator, hand in hand with love. But something else came into the garden, and it was fear. It was in the form of a serpent, and it actually got Adam and Eve kicked out of the garden. And so this is what we're born into. We're born into outside of the garden. We're born outside of the garden, outside of God's love. And we're trying to find life and validation through a myriad of things. You find it differently than me. I find it differently than other people watching. And it's to fill the holes in my heart, because we're made to worship.
So I mean, I want to stay in the garden here for a second. That's super important. Going back to the first people and seeing the way that they had that connection with God, and then seeing the way that that connection was destroyed by the evil one coming in the form of a snake, right? He comes, and what does he do? He lies to them about what God had said. He twists God's truth, right? And they believe it out of the fear in their hearts, and they decide to make a decision to sin against God. Essentially, they say, all right, I'm struggling here. I want what I want. So God, I'm kicking you off the throne of my life, right?
And it doesn't necessarily sound like that, because it's temptation. And so the tempter comes in our minds. This is where the battle is won and lost. This is what the enemy actually has access to, is our minds. And so the tempter comes in the form of like, don't you want to be like your dad? Don't you want independence? Stop holding daddy's hand. Like, you could be just like him. And so we are tempted in those ways to go to the things that are actually going to destroy us.
That's right. It sounds like we are depending on our self-will instead of on God's will for us, right?
And so it's self-will run riot.
Right.
We are in a riot inside, and that's the problem. I can trace back my problem to a little kid, and I was kind of restless. I was restless as a kid. I have a little dog, and I have a chair under our TV, so we'll be watching a sporting event, and the dog will want to sit in the chair on her favorite pillow, and she sits down, then gets up. Like 14 times. We're not cheering for the game anymore. We're cheering for the dog to just sit down. And that was inside of me. I'm just going around. Yeah. I'm not comfortable here. I'm not comfortable there. Yeah. And so when I found alcohol, it sat me down. It didn't matter anymore. It didn't matter if I wasn't even sitting, or if I was restless, or if I was irritable. The world irritated me. Everything was irritating. My parents' rules, my parents' voices, everything in school, and whatever the disability inside of me. I have a little touch of special skills, ADD, and the dyslexia, and all of that was irritating to me, because I wasn't like anybody else. And so when I found alcohol, it just calmed all that. And that was my solution to the problem.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. We see people running away from God, taking him off the throne of their lives, and we see these solutions coming in to fill God's place. It's us taking things into our own hands, running our own lives. So what you're saying is, this problem, it's not the symptoms, it's deeper than that. It's at the spiritual level. Now, we're more than just spiritual beings, right? We also have this physical nature to us. We have this mental or psychological aspect to us. So what's the interplay?
Physically, our bodies break down. Physically, we get dependent on certain substances or relationships or what those things provide for me. Emotionally, I become emotionally attached to these things. I'm an emotional roller coaster. So I'm always trying to find that balance between the top of the roller coaster and the bottom of it. And I'm just trying to like fill all the highs and the lows, and I'm trying to like not be too out of balance, and then it's all about the spiritual problem inside of me. So we like to address those other things of maybe if I just get enough education, or if I just get the right job, or the right relationship, or the amount of cars and the amount of kids, and going enough vacations. And what I'm doing is living life on the outside of the temple, the outside of the garden. And so this is the spiritual nature that we're all born into. So we all need recovery. That's what I look at recovery is. It's the beautiful thing of actually giving God his job, because over the course of time in my addiction, apart from God, I'm the director, I'm the actor, and actors, and I need to conduct everybody and give them the script for me to be okay, for me to be seen okay, for my reputation to be seen as okay, for me to prove and strive. And then I'm also the producer. So I'm the director, the producer, and I'm producing chaos. And I'm producing calamity in all of my relationships. And over the course of time, this burden and weight, this is what I need relief from.
That's really good. So I'm this actor on stage, and when I see another actor on stage doing something I don't like, they're not following my script. I become the director. I become the producer. I kick God out of that chair, and I take his place, and I'm controlling everything, and it causes chaos. That's the problem. I think let's move to the solution here. I think a lot of people are in a place where they're wondering if there is even a solution. Like, is there actually hope for me right now? Because I've been struggling with this for years, or I've been struggling with this and I don't even know what's going on. So is there an actual solution for this?
It's so confusing.
Yeah.
So I would say that there is a solution, and we can have a relationship with God that will solve all of our problems. That's a promise. And so just because you have a belief in God, just because you've made a declaration, maybe you've come forward for prayer and you declare Jesus as your savior and you've given your life to him, it doesn't necessarily mean you have the power.
Help me with that.
So I can have a belief in God and not the power of God. Okay. So I'm still running the show. This is my life. Maybe you've taken a timeout. Maybe you've had a tea timeout, a technical timeout, and you've hit the penalty box. Maybe you've gone to a treatment center. Maybe you've, detoxed off of something specifically. And it's come back in my life over and over again. So I would define this addiction cycle as when I start this addiction, I have trouble stopping it. I lack control. And then I lack the power over it, because when I say I'm never doing this again, and I've done that cycle 500 times, and I go back to it. So once I start, I can't stop. And when I stop, I keep starting again. And so all the solutions that we have available are medical, psychological, those kind of things. But what God offers is a spiritual connection that will overcome addiction.
Now, there's a lot of people who want that spiritual connection, right? And they've even been searching for it. They've been pushing for it. I mean, as you kind of said, I think that spiritual connection starts with what Jesus says. We need to come to Jesus. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So if we want that reconnection with the Father, Jesus is the only way.
Yeah.
But I don't know about you, but I've seen a ton of stuff in the way even after coming to Jesus. It's almost like you were saying, people don't know how to harness the power that's been given to them, right? And there's stuff in the way.
And basically the idea is the temple, the garden in here is full of garbage. And this garbage pile is in here, and you might have had an experience. Come to the cross. I came forward for prayer, and I made a commitment, and I was bawling and snotting and crying, and it was like there was a true experience that happening. I was man crying. If you've ever done that, it's a beautiful thing. Like you walk out of there.
No, never.
Lord, maybe we could do it on camera.
We'll do it right now, yeah.
but I've had that experience, and you've probably had that experience as well. And you get home and you're living off of this spiritual high, this spiritual experience, this awakening that you've had to. There is a solution outside of me, and that wants to come inside of me. But the reality is, you still have the garbage pile there. So 3 weeks, 3 months. All of a sudden, the rats and the cockroaches come back, and you're doing exactly what you were doing before. So the process that we need to work together with is let's identify and put this garbage on the altar, because in addiction, there is nothing you can do to separate yourself from cocaine, pornography, alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, relationships. And there's nothing you can do to this garbage pile to get rid of it. We try to get rid of the garbage piles through some psychotherapy and some medication, that kind of thing. And I'm not saying those things are wrong, but they're not the complete solution. So what I get to do through this process is identify it through our process. We put it on the altar of God, and we say, take the good and the bad.
What you just said, it really is, as you submit all these things, you bring them to the altar of God. Really what you're doing is going back to our previous example. You're taking yourself off of the throne, off of the director's chair, off of the producer's chair. You're saying, God, whatever your will is, it's your chair. It's not mine, right? So, I mean, tell me what that looks like on a daily basis. What does that spiritual fitness, putting God in the director's chair every day, look like?
This is a beautiful, these are the beautiful practices that we have. And we have the Bible, we have prayer, we have meditation. And so as we mature, we actually get an ear to hear God. We ask questions. This is my morning time. This is how I spend my mornings. I'm up at 5:30 in the morning for the most part, and I connect with God, and I'm sitting there doing prayer and meditation, asking God, what's going to happen today? What am I looking for today? Who can I encourage? Who am I going to reach out to? Who's in desperate need right now for prayer right this second? Who in my life may be relapsing or has some really bad relational stuff? Like, how can I be service to them? But that's my focus in the daytime. Yes, I got to come to wherever I'm coming, but can God still use me in my job or my career or my day-to-day? And so I have to be about God's will and not mine. The other thing recovery does is gives me the eyes to see the enemy, the tempter coming in. I get to be the holy temple of God, recover the line of communication and transmission that Adam and Eve had. But now I get to see the serpent come in because I get to see my old past, my old wounding, these experiences that has caused the enemy to come in those voices.
Yeah. So it's like you see the shell that he's coming in, right? You can identify those specific ways that he tempts you over and over again.
Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing for me that God's left in that 2%. He's going to leave there so that I need him on a daily basis.
And really, I mean, as you're talking, I'm just thinking the battle's in here. The battle is recognizing when the enemy is tempting us, who the enemy's voice is, and actually saying, no, hold on, that's the enemy. I'm taking on God's love instead. Right? That's where the battle is day to day. And of course, we need to set ourselves up for success, if you will, in that by being connected with God every morning, by seeking his will, by going into the scriptures so that we can actually know the truth, right?
Growing spiritually.
Growing spiritually. But identifying that tempter and knowing what it is and then battling it each day by taking those thoughts captive, I think is just key.
And the Spirit of God is a spirit of light and love. And so where there's light, you're going to be able to see. And so as God helps you see greater and greater and greater, you're going to see darkness in others, and you're going to be a service to others. In your darkest moments, God's going to put in a place of neutrality in your heart. It's not about forgive or forget. It's like God's going to use your darkness, your darkest moments, that he's now put you in a place of neutrality to be a service to others that have gone through the same stuff. And you're going to help them have freedom like you've had freedom.
That's really good. And I love how you're talking about connecting with God, doing these daily practices. There's the morning time, but there's throughout the daytime as well. You're checking back. But I don't know about you, but there's a ton of temptation, for me at least, to allow those things to be the end in and of themselves. When I think you're saying they can't be. It needs to be about connection with God, not just about reaming off a bunch of check marks and finishing some tasks, right? It's all about the connection with God. And I think there's people who aren't experiencing that hope, that connection with God. What would you say to them, kind of at the close of this video? What would you say to provide hope in their lives when it comes to connection?
I would just say, if a guy like me that train wrecked his marriage, the kids, the home, the cars, and was at a homeless shelter, not being able to die and take his life, not being able to live, and basically had no life. God breathed his life into me to give me life, to be able to pass that message on. He can do that for you. And he can do that for you too.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thanks, John. We so appreciate having you here, and really grateful for the way you've taken the story that God has given you, your connection with him, and you've been overflowing that into our city and into our lives. So thank you.
Give me a fist bump.
Appreciate
there it is.
It's good.
All right.
It's good. Guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been Addictions, the Problem and the Solution of Addictions. This was actually just part 1 of a 2-part series. Next month, John's coming back, and we're going to talk specifically to group leaders about what it looks like to help the members of your group who might be struggling with addictions. How do you identify when somebody's struggling with addictions? How do you know how to support them and walk them through that? And then how do you know when you're kind of at the end of yourself, what you can do to help and where to point them in the right direction? So that's next month. Thanks so much for joining us today on Level Up. Have a great day.